Welcome to MGO Bucks. It's been a little while, Matt, but we are back here
Squinch.
to go blue. We're here to talk about some news that broke just recently. It's about Michigan, Connor Stalions sign stealing. We
Some made-up news.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, actually, I don't know. I mean, the guy who broke it was Isaiah Hole of Locked On of Wolverines. Just saw an article, just saw the video. He said that he has a source behind the scenes, anyway, that says that the Michigan scandal, the NCAA allegations that are coming, are going to be very, very mild compared to what we were talking about. But
Hold on, I just got a message. I think I'm receiving message from my sources. Probably
your sources.
Diego just sent me a message. He says that your source is full of shit.
Yeah, it could be, and it's not my source. It's just kind of like talking about something that someone reported on. But yeah, we'll get into that here coming up. But yeah.
So what did this source say?
Well, we will get into that, but I just kind of said it already. Basically
Right.
saying that the Connor Stalions, the NCAA, the weak NCAA, is going to come back probably with not much to do about anything when it comes to that.
And relatively soon, we're supposed to
as far as the penalties.
The notice is supposed to be relatively soon, right?
Supposed to be coming out pretty soon, but how long have we been hearing that? Like, we've been hearing news about, the news coming out soon, but yeah.
I know. I heard. I mean, because the last one took a year, right? The hamburger.
Yeah, it's always going to take a while.
That took like a year. So like I think, I mean, it hasn't even been a year since the first news about it even broke. So
that's true.
I mean, it would be, in my opinion, I mean, based off of precedents of how long it takes them, and that was like a much more minor story where where I wouldn't think they would need as much evidence and research and interviewing to do that one, right? I mean, this is a much bigger deal as far as even if you can't figure it out, like there's just way more people to interview and more stuff to research to figure this out one way or the other.
Not much anyway. But in any case, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel if you're a huge Michigan or Ohio State fan or a huge fan of the rivalry. If you're someone who you can't get past a full day and not thinking about this rivalry, especially if you lost in the last game. Subscribe to the channel because, my gosh, I know you and I definitely at least think about this once a day, probably more than that, probably an unhealthy amount. But in any case, yeah, thanks everyone for all the subscribers. We generally appreciate everyone. But one thing, before we get into the Connor Stalions thing, there was another piece of news that came out that I wanted to ask you about. And that was on Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel giving interviews, I think on the exact same day, where they both started just gushing over the Ohio State roster, saying it was like the best they had ever seen. That really that was very strange to me. That was very
So first it was the best Ohio State team, and then he was saying maybe the best team in college football in the last 30 years. That's what Urban said.
Yeah, what's going, like, when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh. At first I was like, oh my gosh, wow, that's high praise. And then I was like, wait a second, what is he saying exactly? And why did they both say it on the same day in two separate interviews? And this is my conspiracy theories, kicking in.
Of course.
But why would they do that? And like, it's almost like there's a new AD at Ohio State, right?
Yes.
New AD.
He was supposed to be starting this month, I think.
He did not bring in Ryan Day. He's basically coming in at a point where the head football coach is kind of on the hot seat. I mean, supposedly on the hot seat. But it's almost like they're prepping for for the possibility of Ryan Day to be fired at the end if he doesn't meet these expectations that we've all set.
How many games in a row did Harbaugh lose when he was at Michigan?
He lost a ton. He came in with no expectations. He didn't take over for someone who was basically a legend and a recruiting legend.
Brady Hoke was not a legend.
He was
the legend of Brady Hoke.
If he could have, that would have been awesome if it would have ended after 2011. If Brady Hoke would have never coached another game, yes, he would have been taking over for a legend. But unfortunately, the next 3 years happened after that. But yeah, what do you think of that? Like, what are your thoughts around that? Am I reading into this a little too much as far as like the whole conspiracy?
Yes. I don't know why they said it. I think Ryan Day is probably really pissed that they said it because, we're already getting a lot of super high expectations for this team. There's a lot of stories about there saying how much money that Ohio State spent. There's, it's all like coming back from like some interview that Ryan Day did like a year ago saying that he's going to going forward need about $15 million a year just to retain talent on the roster. That's not even including how much they would need to get people in the transfer portal. So people took that number and just extrapolated that, and were saying that the Ohio State's spending $20-30 million or whatever, and they're just making up numbers. So no one knows. Like, there's these websites that have NAL values for different players, and the hard part is they're getting money from different things. So some of them could be just a national brand where they get it on their own, whereas other ones are going to be coming from the foundations at each of the schools. So you have the money that the school's actually giving them through the foundations, and then you have the money that they can get on their own if they're big enough. Like you win the Heisman Trophy, you're getting your own deals through Dr. Pepper or whatever. You don't need your foundation necessarily to get you the deals. So, but anyway, back to your question about I think both of those guys obviously have been around a ton of talented dudes, and this is going to take a while to go through because I really want to do a deep dive on this question because it's a really good one.
Oh my gosh!
No, because you can give me your thoughts too. We'll go position group by position group. I think overall, like from top to bottom, this might be one of the deeper rosters we've had in a really long time. I mean, it's probably up there with 2019, which I think is one of my favorite Ohio State rosters, even though they somehow couldn't win that game against Clemson. But a lot of that was some really bad calls. But that team was crazy. We have, some of this is going to come down to potential. Obviously, the main thing that people are going to immediately say is you don't have the quarterback to even be in the same breath as some of the best teams this year, let alone the last 30. And obviously, I agree with that because, we have Will Howard, Devin Brown, Julian Sayin, who, that's a good trio of, Will Howard is sort of proven, but it's a Kansas State. He would potentially lost the job to a freshman. Now, I don't think that the quarterback has to be amazing for us to win a national title this year because there's so much talent around him everywhere, offense and defense. The coordinators and everything. I mean, bringing in Chip Kelly was huge. But I think the quarterback room, even also with Lincoln Keenhold, so like the quarterback room in general it's very strong. But we have at least Will Howard has a lot of experience and he's a good runner, and that's the one thing that McCord didn't have. He had no running ability, and having another threat. So like our running game is going to be, Judkins, Travian Henderson, Will Howard off of the the options, and then also you're going to be giving Emeka Egbuka a lot of running plays too, and that's if they don't even get Smith involved. So I'm assuming both those guys are going to be getting a lot of handoffs too, and let's go down to running back. Travion and Judkins, that's the best running back room in the country, probably the best 1-2 punch we've had in a really long time, assuming Henderson stays healthy. Wide receiver, we have in the slot, we have Emeka, Ennis, and Bryson Rogers. Emeka, when he's healthy, is one of the top 3 receivers in the country. And then at X, we have Jeremiah Smith, Ballard, and Kojo Antwi. Obviously, I think a lot of people are saying that Jeremiah Smith is, even without playing, like he did some of those what is it, the athletic testing that they did at one of their pro day things the other day at camp, and he had his top end speed was like 22.5, 23 miles an hour. So he had, apparently it was just faster than Marvin Harrison, and he hasn't even played a game yet. And he also had like a 42-inch vertical, and this is like as a freshman who hasn't even played a game yet. So he's like doing freakishly crazy things like with his speed. But then like all the highlights that I saw in the spring practices and stuff, like he was just making just outstanding grabs over our top corners that a lot of people would think are going to be first and second round corners. So then we have also the other wide receiver that's going to probably make a big jump this year is Carnell Tate. He played a lot as a freshman. He's played probably more than most freshmen have as far as like catches and yards last year. Like one wasn't like terribly significant, but it was, he looked really good
he's
as
all
that third option.
Basically. So he didn't do much, but he's all potential.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for you to get through all of these cotton candy positions that Ohio State is recruited.
Now the problem,
fantastically.
the problem is, a lot of people say offensive line, but I mean, obviously, offensive line is going to make or break the team. But the biggest weakness on the team is really going to be tight end because, Farmer Gronk is gone. He was really good at catching the ball. His blocking wasn't great, but we have Guy Scott Jr., who was not that good at receiving or blocking. And he's best known for getting a personal foul in the Michigan game.
So he got a tight end that's not very good at receiving or blocking.
No.
Okay, awesome.
I mean, maybe I'm hoping that he made some improvements, but he was awful. It's probably the worst starting tight end we've had since I can remember. It's been a long time since we've had starting tight end this bad. And I mean, now a lot of people have said that they think Jelani Thurman could be really good because he's a freak of nature, but I mean, the guy's only had maybe 2 or 3 catches in his career, so he's not had any catches yet. And then we got Will Kaczmarek from Ohio University, who, didn't really do a whole lot there, and we don't really know how good he's going to be. So now we come to the other weakness on the team, but the offensive line was pretty poor the first half of the season. They switched their blocking from zone to gap schemes, and it got a lot better. Second half, they were really good. They even played pretty good against Michigan, considering how good your defensive line and defense in general was. The best defense in the country last year, and they held up pretty good until the end when it mattered. That our guys just weren't nearly the caliber as all the first rounders you guys had.
Yeah,
and second rounders on your defensive line.
That last drive, poor Kyle McCord had 1 minute and no timeouts to go 81 yards and have to score a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, Michigan rushed 4. And
I mean,
all your linemen couldn't. There was one play. There was one play out of the 4 plays on that drive where the Buckeyes blocked really well and gave Kyle McCord some time. And I think that's the pass where he hit Julian Fleming, but then Julian Fleming fumbled it, and then Emeka Egbuka picked it up. It was a great pass. Great catch and pass, even though he got it knocked out. But yeah, the offensive line couldn't handle Michigan rushing 4 on that last one. And it sounds like they just ended kind of badly last year.
Yeah, and so the thing is, like, it's mostly a bunch of above average guys. So like, there's no superstars in the line other than potentially Josh Simmons could work himself into our left tackle. Had a really good season. Yeah, and so he's like the only position really on the offensive line that I'm not worried about is left tackle, which is good because that's the most important position. And then from Ryan Day has said, and from everything else, like right guard is like the big question mark outside of tight end. We have to have Tegra Shabola, Luke Montgomery, or Toby Wilson as our right guard. But the good thing is we have Simmons, Donovan Jackson left guard, and Josh Fryer at right tackle, and Seth McLaughlin at center. So all these guys have had multiple years of starting, and that's the thing. So if most of these guys, the Ohio State guys anyway, if all 3 of them have already played together for a number of years, and then the new guy from Alabama is a very good center, so he doesn't have like the continuity with our guys, but all 4 of those guys have a lot of experience. And then Tegra Shabola has had a decent amount of experience as a backup, and he's been there in the system for a while. He just hasn't been able to show it yet. So, and Day still, he doesn't generally pick on positions too much unless he's really worried about it. And he has mentioned right guard quite a bit, and that's pretty much everyone that watched any of the practices has always complained about that one position that no one has really stepped forward. And that's why everyone was hoping in the transfer portal we would have been able to get one more offensive lineman, because I felt like this team was, to definitely win this year, we really just need like one more offensive line. And then again, at right tackle, Josh Fryer is he's okay against most of the teams, but against the elite teams in the playoffs, he can't handle the speed rush. So
yeah, that's not good.
Missouri lit him up.
Yeah, not good, because really Ohio State has a 3-game schedule this year.
Yeah.
They play Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan.
Penn State and Michigan.
And
yeah.
the rest of the games are going to be wins. I mean, it's basically practice games. Ohio State's got a favorable schedule this year. But I agree with you. I mean, going through that was really good. I mean, I think we can both agree that the defense for Ohio State's elite. Going to be top
so
two,
now
top three,
now we want to go through why.
I don't think we need to go
and
through
Tressel.
all of the defensive players the way we did the offense, but we can just agree Michigan and Ohio State have amazing defenses this year. They will. I think Ohio State probably is a little better.
The one other position that it's going to be interesting. It's going to be what CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles do at linebacker, because Cody Simon has had some experience last year and was pretty good, not elite or anything, but apparently everyone has been gushing about CJ Hicks, and then Sonny Styles, of course, played a lot of safety, and now he's going to be a linebacker also. So between those two, one of them has to step up.
CJ Hicks, so he got a nasty injury, didn't he? Like in the Michigan game a couple of years ago as a freshman. I'm pretty sure he had a nasty injury, which is probably what slowed him down. Or he's a bust. I don't know. He's been on the bench quite a while, but maybe his leg injury has just taken a lot longer to heal. It was nasty. I remember seeing it. It was on a special teams play when he was a freshman, CJ Hicks. It was in 2021 or 2022. I can't remember. But I just remember right at the beginning of the game, they were basically hauling him off. So that could be the reason why he's not doing good. We'll find out. Maybe he'll be better this year. Hopefully for Ohio State, that is, anyway, because linebacker was average to good last year. I think that's probably, you would say, the weakest link. But at the same time, you're getting a 5-star coming in from the safety position.
Yeah.
And you'll probably be solid or just the same as last year, I would imagine.
Yeah, so it's not like a concern, but it also could be if like Hicks and Styles, if either of those guys step up, it could end up being a big strength too. And then also like you look at players, like remember in 1995 or 1996 when we got Katzenmoyer, he had a veteran defensive line in front of him, and he was able to get like 15 sacks his freshman year. So if you have this guy, and let's say Hicks is, maybe he's not the best in coverage, but, even in the spring game and in a lot of the practices, he's been really good at getting to the quarterback. So maybe he's just used to blitz every time. And with an elite defensive line in front of him, he's, might be able to get double-digit sacks.
It's true.
Which would be pretty nice.
So taking this conversation back to like the original question, is because Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel went on TV and said this is like the most talented roster that they've ever seen. So I don't think this year at quarter, because you mentioned at quarterback and offensive line, it can't be. It has to have been 2019 if you were going to make that claim, right?
Yes.
Because that a year when you had an awesome quarterback. Justin Fields was in his second year. He was awesome.
Yeah, we had like 3 guys in the Heisman contest. We had J.K. Dobbins had 2,000 yards or something, and then we had Justin Fields, who was amazing, and then we had Chase Young. So we had 3 of the top 5 guys in the country in the Heisman.
Yeah, so I don't know what those 2 dudes are talking about right now. I don't know what their game is, but my conspiracy theory, my theory is that they're prepping for what if Ryan Day doesn't actually meet expectations. And let's define what the expectations are. He's got to beat Michigan, right? That's got to be in there. Like
you know what though?
Let's cap this off by talking about what would have to happen for Ryan Day to be fired after this year. It would have to be a loss to Michigan. Would have to be in there.
I don't think that that's enough. I think he would have to lose to Michigan and then also lose in the first round of the playoff. If both of those things happen, he's definitely gone. And now, if he wins,
what about
if he loses? If he loses to Michigan, Oregon? That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to get fired. No, the Oregon game doesn't matter hardly at all.
What if he loses to Penn State?
But so it just depends on like what the postseason. No, the postseason matters. So like, let's say you beat. So you're saying you beat Oregon and Michigan and lose to Penn State. That doesn't matter. You're still going to be getting. You're still, and then if you win the Big Ten championship, you're still getting a top 4 seed and a bye.
I don't think you can win the Big Ten championship if you lose to Penn State and to Oregon. And I
No,
was
I
just
said
saying,
one or the other. If you lose to
one or
both,
the
you
other.
can't. Yeah, I
Yeah,
said one or the other.
you could.
So it just depends what you're saying. So like you lose to Oregon and to Penn State, but then you beat Michigan, and then you could potentially still get into the playoffs
Yeah.
with 2 losses.
Well, maybe what he needs is some better sign stealing. Maybe that's the ticket for the 2024 national title. And
But
that's a
what I
good
was going to say
segue
though
into our
is
next conversation.
it's almost impossible for him to get fired this year. Basically, if he loses to Michigan again, and only wins like 1 playoff game or something, or even if he wins 2, like I just still think losing to Michigan a 4th time, especially if they don't do well in the playoffs, he's going to be on the hot seat. But I think it's almost impossible to get fired again unless like they lose to Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan and miss the playoffs or something. Like that would be the only way he would get fired if he lost all 3 of those.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll find out because they're going to play, and I think that if he lost to Michigan at Ohio State to this Michigan team that is losing
The
so
Michigan
much,
team has potentially more first rounders on it than Ohio State does.
all on defense, maybe one on offense at tight end.
Yeah.
But
like,
yeah,
look, we have a lot of good talent, but that is draft eligible. Now, Caleb Downs is going to be a first rounder, but he's not draft eligible. DJ Smith might be, but he's not draft eligible. So as far as draft eligible players that are first rounders, I mean, Emeka could be, but he's not a lock. Our defensive ends could be, but neither of them are a lock. Maybe our left tackle if he has a really good year. But I mean, there's no like high end talent. Like that's why it's hard to judge these like best team ever scenarios. So like the 2019 had like a great secondary, had Chase Young, had a great quarterback, but then there was like some deficiencies in other areas, a few. Whereas like maybe this team just doesn't have any like major deficiencies, but they also don't have the level of, they don't have like that too many superstars other than like Caleb Downs and JJ Smith and maybe Judkins or Travion if they're healthy, and Emeka if he's healthy. I mean, it's a lot of these is like, with Emeka and Travion, it's sort of like, when they're healthy, they're superstars. When they're not, but that sort of, it drops you down a peg because you want someone who's reliable. And, Michigan has 2 defensive linemen at least that are going to be likely first rounders. They have a corner who's going to be a first rounder. So you guys have minimum of like 3 first rounders, and I don't even know for sure if we have any.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on how the year kind of rolls out on paper.
So people are like saying, Michigan lost all this, but they still have like, as far as high end talent, Michigan still has the lead in high end talent
on defense. Yes, they definitely do.
Well, overall, like you have more first round draftable players than we do.
Yes, that is very true. That's going to be.
I guess it's sort of
that if Michigan loses like 3 or 4 games, that's going to be difficult for me to stomach watching 3 or 4 first rounders jump off the board and be like, we had 3 or 4 losses.
So losing. Yeah. How did you guys lose Sab to Alabama? Because if you would have had him back,
we had all our safeties back. He probably didn't want to share time. He probably saw a lot of other places where he could go in and be the number 1 starter at safety.
So PFF counted him as a safety in the SEC, even though he hasn't played there yet. And he's out of all the returning players who were safeties in the SEC, Sab as a backup. Is it Sab or Sab?
Sab.
Anyway, he was considered the number 3 safety in the SEC returning. So he wasn't even a starter for you guys, and he's already considered that high in the SEC.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough losing that guy, because it was awesome getting him to begin with, because he was more of an SEC kid anyway, and Michigan got him. So that's pretty rough. I think we'll be fine with the guys we've got, but losing Rod Moore on top of that.
Yeah, that's like a double. And that's the thing, that you guys had a thing that was really crazy about your team last year. I mean, everyone talks about JJ and Corum, but like the main thing to me was just the depth everywhere. I mean, you had like guys in the secondary, like all these backups that were just making plays left and right, like everyone.
Yeah, guys you never heard of. Like, who the heck is that guy? Yeah.
So it's just
that happened to me a couple times. That play on Emeka Ibuka last year in the game that he just came shooting across the field, and I thought Emeka was going to catch that pass. It was a good pass from Kyle, but and I can't even remember the safety's name now. He's back on the team, but yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and go to the Stallions conspiracy that's happening, because we did hear some news. Mentioned this in the beginning of the video. We did. I heard from news. I want to give the guy the credit for breaking this, or if it's breaking. Locked On Wolverines, Isaiah Hole. He said that he's got a source behind the scenes that told him that the NCAA is back with their allegations, and the allegations are going to be a joke. I mean, he's kind of laughing them off. I don't know what you think about that. In the chat, what the heck do you guys think about this? Do you think that Michigan is going to get the hammer, or does the NCAA, who's at the weakest it's ever been, right? The weakest it's ever been in the history of the NCAA right now. Are they going to come back and just kind of give a little slap on the wrist on this? It's interesting. I think it's very interesting. I mean, personally, I think that it's very possible the NCAA could come back with not very much, especially considering the fact that
Harbaugh's gone.
Harbaugh's gone, and number two, they already suspended Harbaugh for 3 games last year, with no prep, and it was the hardest 3 games of the year. It was Ohio State, Penn State, and Maryland, and that in itself was a huge punishment. Even if Michigan didn't have the decency to lose one of those games,
didn't he get wasn't there some suspensions the first couple games too? Couple games.
Yeah, that was for Burgergate, I believe. Yeah, that was for Burgergate that they agreed on, and they had agreed on that. The NCAA and Michigan agreed on those 3 games, sort of. NCAA wanted 4, but Michigan said no, so we're only going to do 3. And so then Burgergate, the actual allegations came out. They said, here's your punishments, and they were very mild. So a lot of that is making me think that maybe this Connor Stalions sign stealing scandal is also going to be mild, because it was last year. The coaches are gone. There was already a punishment. I don't know. We'll find out. Matt, what do you think?
Well, the first thing I was going to say is, before we even get to the allegations, I would want to know, how reliable is this guy who's reporting this? Because
he's a pretty big.
I mean,
They're part of USA Today. They're part of USA Today, so it's not like just some.
I know, but I'm just saying, has he had reliable reports? Because what's his name? Sam Webb, whose nickname is Scam Webb. He is always reporting stuff, and everything he said has been wrong. And he goes on ESPN, he's never gets anything right, and he's big enough to get on ESPN and talk to people about this nonsense. So, and all the reporters that were saying how, remember when when it first came out and you guys were going to fight it and you guys are going to take it to court, everyone on the Michigan beat, everyone said we were going to fight this, the blue wall. And then they were saying that they had the judge went to Michigan and there's no chance that he was going to get suspended. And then some news came out, some people got fired, and then all of a sudden they dropped their appeal and they took the suspension. And so every single reporter missed that.
Yeah. At the beginning, though, everyone was speculating and kind of
No, but it wasn't speculation. They were all saying that it was fact.
I know, but still, there was a lot of BS in the beginning of all this, because no one knew it was really going to happen. Yeah. And it was also up in the air, right? We were all everyone was giving their opinion, essentially, even me. I bought into it too. I was like, no way.
The craziest thing out of all this is the Central Michigan University has not acknowledged that was him still. They have still not.
They're just going to let this pass by.
They're like, maybe if we just keep ignoring it, they'll forget that he was, on our sideline.
Pretending it doesn't exist is a viable way of trying to make something.
Him on the sidelines with the shades was the single funniest thing I think I saw last year, easily. That was hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Blue Wolf
and Michigan State was
depends on the
terrible.
It depends on the notice of allegations, what we see. That's true. But it's kind of fun to try and predict what this is going to be, especially since we've heard from the back end that it's not going to be a very big deal. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was a slap on the wrist at this point. Michigan's already been they've already been punished. I mean, imagine if Michigan would have lost one of those games last year and missed the playoffs. I mean, imagine how that would have been a disaster.
I think that's what they were hoping would happen. That way it would take care of itself, and then they wouldn't have to worry about a punishment in the future. But now, it seems like, the biggest disaster would be if you guys had to like vacate wins from 2.5 years of this sign stealing going on. That would be like the absolute
that would
hammer.
be a big punishment.
Yeah.
And that would mean the
can't imagine.
reporting today from Locked On Wolverines was not right, if that's the case.
Yeah.
But they were going to fight it, and they did change course. I think you're right. They were going to fight it.
So what would make you change course?
Chances are they just kept discussing. Again, it was all new for everyone, even Michigan, even the Big Ten.
Well, you guys fired a couple people. Partridge got fired, and Partridge is suing the university now.
Well, I think that might actually be what happened. What was like, all right, like they got Partridge. Partridge did something. Who knows what he did? We'll find out. Hopefully, hopefully we find out what he actually did.
Well, I'll give you
after that Michigan was like,
I'll give you a hint. So
getting out of hand.
Michigan is going to pay him whatever he wants because they're not going to want to have any kind of discovery coming out about what was going on with him.
Well,
so they're just going to pay him off. He's not going to say anything. Yeah, he's going to get a huge settlement
as his lawyer. So if you're Tom Mars and you're him, that is what you're going for, right? I mean, you're a lawyer.
Yeah, you're going to get a ton of money.
That's what he wants. He probably doesn't want to do anything but just get a settlement, right? I mean, that's what this is.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like really pissed and you think you could make the school that fired you unjustly, if you were fired unjustly, like, money's not going to hurt Michigan, but that would.
And Blue Wolverine, thank you, because I correct myself all the time on this. Excuse me. Sign stealing, I think I cough right before I'm about to lie, apparently. Yeah. But it isn't sign stealing. Yeah, that's legal. Legal sign stealing. But the scouting is what was the problem.
Yeah.
Stallions going to games and hanging out at games, recording.
Well,
he obviously did a great job too.
The main reason I think that you guys should get in trouble is because he was too stupid to not have his Venmo with it, have that anonymously done. Like
he's a terrible criminal.
Oh my God. So he was so good at actually stealing the signs, which is impressive, but then he screws it up by like leaving a paper trail that a sixth grader could follow on Venmo.
Yeah. So that brings up another question on this. Like, you're a lawyer, so the NCAA doesn't have like subpoena power, do they?
No,
I mean, so they probably can't get all the information that we're all speculating that actually happened. Like,
the only way
coaches knew
something like that happens if there's some sort of like federal crime involved. Which the only thing was that the one guy who was fired for being like a pedo was trying to get underage girls or something, but that was completely unrelated to the football scandal. I guess the other thing they could potentially get him with, we never heard. Remember, there was all those allegations that your coordinator had hacked into some Ohio State server and got our practice film.
Yeah, who knows about that? That might have been just a rumor.
So that would be a legitimate crime that the feds could potentially get involved in, but I haven't heard anything at all. Like, I mean, there was a lot of talk about that when it first came out, and then of course the Michigan beat was saying that Ryan Day's brother was the one that was behind it, which is hilarious.
He works for county sheriff or something, the FBI, or used to work.
He's a private investigator or something. His brother.
Yeah. Hey.
So that was. There's so many crazy stories going on. It's like, I mean, how funny would that have been if Ryan Day's brother was behind all this stuff even happening?
Very true. Very true. And yes, Blue Wolverine. There's probably going to be a Netflix documentary on all this because it's just too
the problem
to not have a documentary.
It depends on who you get to do the documentary, because if you saw the Swamp Kings, which was still entertaining, they got Tebow and Urban Meyer to do it only because they made them not say a bunch of the bad stuff that they didn't want to be talked about. So there's very little Aaron Hernandez stuff and a bunch of other stuff that was shady that was not talked about because they wouldn't have been able to get Urban and Tebow on there to do it. So it was a very rated G program, even though it was still interesting. they definitely cut out a lot of stuff. So
I never watched that. I need to watch that.
Who's going to want to talk about this scandal for Michigan? Like you got to get people, like usually, because that thing was different. Like they still won two titles. So it's like, yeah, we had a bunch of crazy stuff going on, but we won 2 titles. And I mean, I guess, Michigan did win the title, so maybe, it'll be like one of those things. Well, we did have a lot of crazy stuff going on, but we still won. So, maybe there will be people willing to talk about it, as long as it's not too bad as what they admit.
There probably will be one, but it won't be with any like real interviews with anyone involved, because they're all working for the Chargers now. Anyone who is involved at this point. So I think that we're not going to know a lot is what's going to happen. And we're just going to see what happens with these allegations and with what the NCAA comes down with. And I'm not predicting because we heard it, but I agree. I think that it's going to be light. I don't think anyone else in the country wants to hear that other than Michigan fans.
Well, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? I mean, will it be worse than Burgergate? Because there were suspensions for that.
On par with Burgergate.
Is Sharon more involved at all? Is he going to get dinged?
No,
is he going to get suspended a few games?
You'd need subpoena power to be able to do that. You can't get you'd have to prove that Sharon was involved in some way, and the NCAA doesn't.
Well, no, you could have other witnesses could have told them. Other witnesses could have told them.
But they would. I don't know what the NCAA needs as evidence. Is it just he said, she said, that they need, or I don't know. But it sounds like
they'll get some receipts. I mean, the don't you remember the letter that the Big Ten wrote? There was a lot of stuff that they had in there. It sounded pretty bad to me.
Yep, in about a decade, Connor Stalions will need some money. And he will actually be doing the interview, but it'll be a tell-all. Oh, that's too funny. All right, we are about time to wrap up here. Matt, it's good to see you, and thanks for jumping on. We'll do this a little bit more, taking a little break and kind of a hiatus here in the off season. But we've only got maybe a couple months before football starts, so we're gearing up, and it's going to be a lot of fun because fall camp is going to be starting. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of big recruiting going on. Ohio State had a ton of big recruits, including
we may have to talk
offensive tackle, who is the best offensive tackle in the country. Hopefully, we can actually get some meat up front to the recruiting class, which
you need some meat up front. Yeah. Other than that, all that cotton candy you've got on the outside. But anyway, thanks everyone. Appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Greatly appreciated, and we will all talk to you all later. Take it easy. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.